Well, hello there. Welcome back to Divas, Diamonds, and Dollars podcast, where we offer whole life insights and a unique perspective from two sisters and sistahs speaking to the collective sisterhood of women everywhere. We offer weekly conversations about the status of women today and empower you with the tools and strategies to help you live your best life. Based on our business and career management backgrounds, we offer sound guidance and share the key success principles for business and personal finance. Remember, we are speaking to all that you are, and we're here to support you on your personal growth journey. We invite you to lean in for possibly the best conversation you're going to have all week. How's it going? So, as autumn approaches, I kid you not, even though with climate change, it could still be toasty out depending on where you are. The changing seasons can serve as an excellent catalyst for, turning over a new leaf. And that is today's topic. Are you at a crossroad? Is it time to pivot? So when the global pandemic kept you feeling like you were in a lockdown position, did you plan to pivot? Or were you just thrust into a different leadership position? Did you consider a different career? Now, facts are facts, and we are honest here, even though we're sharing our all. Now, not every ship you come across is one you have to take. Sometimes standing still is the best move you ever make. Now, that just happened to be a line from Sarah Brightman's song, The Journey Home. I was listening to it as I was getting ready for you ladies. And so it really stood out. So I thought I should share that with you because on the one hand, when you think it through, and that's what we want you to do, we want you to go through the whole woulda, coulda, shoulda, lay it out. We don't want you, again, no cliff diving, right? And whatever your decision make, sometimes not to, no is also a decision. It's an acceptable decision. But in this case, what if it is time to make a pivot? And so we want to walk you through that process if you have really just cannot let go of that thought. Now, much has been made about the world being pushed into a world of uncertainty. As a leader, whether it is your own business or in your workplace, you have always encountered change. That's part of the daily. Now, some are bigger than others. So today, in this podcast, we bring together this month's topic, this whole month. I hope you've been paying attention. That's what we have been talking to you about the whole month is change. Change is upon us. So we're just bringing it all together here in this final podcast for September, if you will. So you're going to ask yourself, what did we learn? And how to move forward should be the biggest life lessons for the past 18 months. Now, and remember, you got the power. You can pivot even in a male-dominated industry. So don't let that be remotely close to anything that's holding you back. So I'm sure that you've heard, say, for example, let me see if I can get this right. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. Now, if that's where you found yourself, if that's your headspace, are you stuck in a rut? I mean, we don't know why you've decided to make a change. I mean, the world has really thrown so much on us that in itself could be the reason for making a change, not, I suppose, whatever your timeline was or your time frame. Maybe you had planned one, a few years out, 10 years out, who knows what your, where you are in your particular journey. But the world changed. And so we have to do things differently. And sometimes I just want you to be clear. When I say the word pivot, to me, that is, you just picture that as a visual. It's like that is a hard left or a hard right. That means it's a big change. So again, we're not talking about what you're having for dinner or what you're going to, maybe going to wear high heels or flats. No, much bigger than that, right? So, holy moly, sister dear, why don't you lead us off?
Okay. Well, You reminded me when you gave the quote out of a song or a line out of a song that I saw one today that I thought fit as well. I said, huh, that's so true. And it says, a smooth sea never made a skilled sailor.
Yep.
And everything we talk about every week, I mean, that definitely fits. There is no smooth sailing, right? I mean, yeah, you might want a smooth, beautiful day, smooth sailing, but you know what? Chances are it's going to lull you to sleep. And you might wake up and say, "Ooh, where am I?" So, like you said, hard left, right? So that's great. And then, like you mentioned, what did we learn the past 18 months? Well, sometimes I feel like if I, you give that number or the statistics, it really kind of hits home. And so the statistic that I've seen more than once, and we've shared it, is 1.8 million women are no longer in the workforce because of the pandemic. And those who are of the unemployed women, 66% are saying that they need to, or they're looking at changing their career or occupation. So we are truly talking about a hard left, right? And so what we've learned and what we've shared in various ways is how you face change is going to impact what you end up doing, short-term or long-term, but pretty much pivot, we're probably talking about what you do in the short term that's going to be a long-term change, right? And so it requires having a good handle on who you are, because we're talking about the whole woman, and we've shared several things about who you are, and you'll hear some of it as we recap here. And then, what's your financial position? So, Risa, we've laughed about some things that, women, really all humans kind of get into, but probably more so women. So let's just throw out a question. If you're still trying to figure it out, or if you did figure it out, were you easily distracted when you were trying to achieve your goals? So is that a real thing, Larisa, or not?
Here's the scoop. I'm not trying to turn our podcast into a series of quotes, but if you're doing any kind of living, there's going to be some ups and some downs. There's going to be some challenges. And so while you think that when you set your goal, it is a forward path, straight shot, life tells us otherwise. So yes, we want you to have goals, and yes, we want you to have a plan, but we understand that things happen. And so I call it taking the scenic route. Sometimes you cannot just make a straight shot. You're still on the path, you're still on the journey. But then you got a whole life situation over here, or someone else's needs over here. And it kind of bounces you about or buffets you in the winds of change, winds of life. So now I'm distracted, yes. Distracted, well, first of all, you have, like I said, all the changes and all the things that are hitting you or buffeting you, coming up that you didn't plan on. That's someone else's ism half the time, right? But then you have that whole self-doubt conversation. You start to second guess yourself or start to question yourself. Am I, is this right for me? Should I keep going, or whatever the situation is? So distracted, very possibly. I mean, easily distracted, not the big goals, not easily distracted. But it may just take you longer just because of things happening. So are you easily distracted from your goals, from achieving your goals? I mean, you can be, right? We're being honest here. So you can be, but I would say it's not always intentional. It's just all the things that are going on as you are taking those giant steps forward. We're always talking about moving forward. So those are my thoughts anyway. I don't know if you feel differently, but I think that's kind of how it really happens in the real.
Right, that's right. And I can use myself for an example. I'm goal oriented and list. I live by a list. But I'm going to confess. I'll start that list. I'll start working on it, and then somebody asks you to do something, or somebody calls you, or you thought about two or three little things that are kind of low in the weeds. You really don't have to do now, but you feel like you need to get them off your plate. That's the kind of distraction. If you are that person, you need to be mindful of, because like you said, you might not get to it, as fast as you want to. And so something that's really related to that, you've spoken a lot about this. Are you risk adverse? I think, so in the beginning, we're kind of talking, know thyself and be true. So are you risk adverse? If you're unsure, if you were unsure, maybe you overcame and can help somebody else who needs to ride out the storm. But if you're still kind of sweating it because, things are continuing to change, people thought that business was going to come back. They held on to your position. Now they're looking at, well, I might have to let you go. So, and if you have been just kind of waiting, you really don't want to make a move, but you're looking at the tea leaves, you got to think about that. So risk adverse, Larisa, I know you're out there always, with your morning moxies, it really, to me, they're great motivations, what people need to do when they get up in the morning, right? And that's a lot of what you speak to.
Well, the Morning Moxie is designed to help you jumpstart your day, but in bite-sized pieces, because we know you're busy. So if you haven't already, do check them out on my YouTube channel, the Larisa Group. But for your point on being risk averse, now, again, our suggestion is that as an entrepreneur, as a leader in your career, wherever you are on the journey, in order to move forward, in order to grow and become, you must take well thought out, calculated risk. So you do need to take those leaps of faith, and you need to take those steps forward. We just want you to think it out, but we don't want you to overthink it. So to the question about should you ride out the storm, we don't know your particular situation, especially women of a certain age. Once you get to, face it, 40-ish, 45 plus, it is tough to find a new job. So it's not like you can't, but if you decide to do that, you first, you always want to have that resume ready. Because someone may make the decision for you. We're suggesting that you be proactive and take control of your own future. Yes, right. It's scary. Yes, it's unknown. Yes, it's new. But again, new does not have to be bad. It's just different. So don't overthink it. And people who get laid off, it's not always a surprise. Sometimes it is, but sometimes there are signs. You mentioned reading the tea leaves. You need to be aware, you need to pay attention. You cannot just hunker down, put your shoulder to the wheel and put your blinders on. You must be aware, not paranoid. You just need to pay attention. So sure, risk is risky, but again, you're all grown up now. So step on out.
I like the word calculated risk, because it's like a lot of things. Too often we focus on the negative. Risk adverse kind of just leaves it there. You envision this person just kind of pedaling in the same spot. Versus calculated risk, I have a vision of a person thinking and planning. So it's really important that people understand what we're talking about. So we've said you must plan. You can't be wringing your hands, and don't procrastinate. Don't put off tomorrow what you can do today. It's one of the oldest statements in the book, but it's so true. don't put off what you can do today. And so as we pivot, what else can you do? That is going to be your question. What else can you do? And so today, in our episode description, we described to you that it is still a very male-dominated industry in a lot of areas, but women are making some huge gains. And the opportunity exists to, I think we're raising awareness. You can raise awareness if you're coaching somebody. You can be the example that we have an essential role. Recognize women have an essential role. Sometimes even the smartest, sharpest women, every now and then you catch yourself. Well, wait a minute, don't fall into the trap of, oh, so I walk into the room and it's 10 men and it's just me. Okay, well, so what? You be the one, right? And so think about what else you can do. Think what is going to fulfill you or satisfy you when you're making a decision. And so I've come across two really big examples for women. So this month is, well, let me say this, I'm going to read it the way it really is. National Association of Home Builders Professional Women in Building Council. So, wow, what a mouthful. Now that could lead you down different paths, but I remember some years ago, my husband's very handy with his hands, and we were having dinner with another couple, and her husband was saying something, but as it turns out, his wife was the one that was handy. She knew all about the tools. And so there went the conversation about women and tools. And, you hear the jokes. There's the assumptions women don't know anything but to do with a tool. Well, my sister knows a lot about handy do-it-yourself.
I'm gonna leave that alone.
And I've learned a lot of things just, watching or assisting my husband. But moving fast forward, I look at it like, if I had to do something, could I do it? And that's what, to me, I'm always thinking about what if I had to change opportunities, career experience, what could I do? We all should. So it's just the pandemic woke up some more so than others. But this month, there are a group of women who were celebrating in Utah that this was the first home ever built, totally everything. Remember the house that Jack built, that saying? Well, this is like, remember the house that she built, okay? So they did the whole house. And so that really shouldn't be necessarily unusual. It's what we think we can do and what we step out and do. Another example, here, there's a community college, and a lot of women want to be in the automobile and the trade of fixing cars. Women buy 62% of the cars. Shouldn't you know a little bit about them? I can remember changing the oil, but I was forced to do a couple things back in the day. I am so thankful today I don't have to do that. But so in some cases, it has to be done. Everybody can't take their car to the shop. So these women are not only just learning that automobile industry repair business, but they're saying they want to be teachers. They want to be leaders. These women said they had to pivot. They had to make a change. And they realized this was something they liked to do. What they were doing, they were not satisfied doing it. That's what we're talking about. Power in the pivot. Power means you are fulfilled, you are satisfied. That's what we're talking about.
I always like to hear about women in what, quote unquote, working in the non-traditional industries, such as you mentioned, construction, the automotive industry. It's just, well, this is 2021. So, we've come a long way, baby. But there are still some, oh my good, some, it's not assumptions, but anyway, how quote unquote tradition has been, or what have been traditional fields for women. And I'm suggesting that, you shake off the tradition, the mantle of tradition. You go out there, and if this is what you're drawn to, and again, this whole conversation, power in the pivot, hard left, hard right, whichever direction you're going in. Um, it could be, it's time for change, and it's time for you to step into your own. So wherever path that takes you down, we're here to support you. We're saying go for it. Think it through, but go for it. Now, if you're in business, of course, you do need to consider your cash flow. That's huge. I mean, that's what you're in business for. So again, you do need to map it out. You do need to consider your customer base, the revenue that they generate. There's a lot of considerations when you are a business owner. But again, what position, for example, how do you position your company for that next level? I happen to be consulting with a business owner. He wanted to, how do I want to say this? His goal was, I don't know, he wanted to make $1 million in a year, journey up to the next level, because he'd been doing a lot of small contracts. And so we met, and I suggested he might want to consider working for bigger contracts, go for the big money, just leave some of these little ones down by the side. Sometimes you have to fire that customer who's taking up too much of your time, but not generating the revenue. And so when I met with him recently, he told me that he was actually at 1.3, 1.4 million. So he exceeded his goal. So super happy for him. I want to just take a little bit of, credit for helping him reach his goal. But right now he is looking at retiring early. He wants to sell his business. So we have something else to work on. But it really was a matter of him changing his focus, repositioning himself. I told him, go after the big contracts, because it's less work for more money to some degree. But you really have to think about it. If this client is taking up too much of your time, if it's keeping you from getting you where you want to go, because these are they're taking up so much of your time. They always have questions, they always have complaints, they always have needs. They want more. And you have to look at it. What are they taking? What resources are they utilizing? And how much revenue is generated from utilizing all these resources? And if it's, if that balance is not right, you need to look over here. So anyway, that might have been a slight detour, but that, have to look at as a business owner, what cash flow is king.
Yeah, that was really right on. I'm glad you brought that up. I think that's a major piece of all of this. So, we're talking about fulfillment. That's your dream. Talking about cash. That's a necessity. And resources, sometimes we think we can do it ourselves. So just recently, there's a husband and wife team. They've been kind of going together a business since 2017. But what I thought was a novel idea was they're using some students to help them with students who are learning finance, to help them with the admin part. Because there's two things going on right now. People are afraid to go back to work, I suppose, because they're like, where are the people? I mean, about, I want to say probably a year ago, no, more like 18 months ago for me, the big discussion was, even where I was working, so just prior to the pandemic, but leading into the pandemic, we were working on employee retention. So for me, I did two things. I would, get, the meet and greet when you first come into the organization, but I would do an exit interview too, because there's a lot of stuff in between, but that's what the supervisors do. And, I work with the supervisors to make sure they're, keeping up with their employees. But the real point was, how do we meet expectations, right? You have to do that, as you said, Larisa, your customers. Are we satisfying our customers? Because sometimes the pivot is we're off. Our revenue is off. Our people aren't coming to work, or we don't have the right people. So it's employee retention means getting the right people, understanding why if you see 5 businesses maybe on the same street that close, you need to understand why they closed, right? And maybe talk to other people who are in the same business as you to understand that. Unfortunately, my sister kind of laughed about this. I think, I don't know, maybe last podcast, but somewhere there's a ship stuck out somewhere. And they're trying to figure out when they're going to get these supplies. And I'm like, oh my gosh, right now they're talking about Christmas. Go buy your stuff early. It's, while it seems ridiculous, but maybe you need to know about, are you going to be hit with that? I know early on during the pandemic, I listened to, I was at a conference and a guy was just talking about understanding his whole, everything that goes into his business for him to be successful. So either you are in that situation or you figured it out. Well, you figured it out and are not in that situation, and some are still trying to figure it out. But guess what? You got to feed your family. You know, so how much money in the bank do you have? How much can you borrow or pull together from various sources? So it's just a lot of considerations for thinking about how you pivot and how well you're going to do that. Because at the end of the day, you want to know how impactful you are with being successful. And so you're trying to develop solutions, and you have to be doing that on an ongoing basis. I think while pivot is not a new word, but as I have read how industries are doing and individuals, what they're learning more so is how do we connect? Because now communities are talking about people. And so, you know, have an awareness of what's going on. Is your business going to be viable? Do you need to look at your strategic plan and maybe make some tweaks? I know I said a lot for you to just jump on there.
Well, I mean, I'm just really going to reiterate, you know, all that we are talking about, I think probably in every podcast is, it is about future, excuse me, about being future oriented, about planning and, well, essentially I always say growing and becoming. It's like, you know, where you're going next. You always have to be thinking about next, because there is no more business as usual. We already said last week that nimble is the new normal because things are changing. And I think that at some point we might stop talking about things changing, because that's going to be the new normal. Everything is going to be different all the time. So I think that it's just, you know, this is where we are. These are the limited words that we have. This is the only language we have to describe what's really going on out there. But from logistics, who ever thought about logistics and supply chain?
Right.
Nobody. Let me tell you, Larisa did not, until I got to the store, and I was very irritated. Like definitely in the first part of the big pandemic, when I couldn't find some simple macaroni, oh, I was highly irritated. You know, I'm like, what is wrong with these people? And I was forced to buy an off-brand toilet paper, for example, and I spent, you know, more gas than is reasonable looking for the brand of toilet paper that I wanted, for example, until, you know, you just had to give in because, you know, you got things to do. So these are just the simple things that we never, ever thought we'd be thinking about, never, ever thought we'd be talking about. So I just, you know, this is going to sound crazy as I'm saying the words, but I want you to think about it. This is another, well, first of all, this part is not crazy. This is the fact. This is 200% one reason you should be a multipreneur. You must have different revenue streams because there is so much that is out of your control. You plan, you work hard, you do, you go, you find, you make, you earn. And you know, there's old tidal wave right around the corner. Do not put all your eggs in one basket. So, but whatever journey you're on, you must always have a plan B. And frankly, you need a plan C. So, yeah, it does come down to carefully figuring out your next steps, but you need to have some next steps. So
Right.
don't get stuck. Don't get too comfortable. That's what we should have said. We couldn't name this. Don't Are you too comfortable? That's a very good question. And you're gonna have to shake it up because that's where we are today and that's where we're gonna be tomorrow. So how are you going to adjust? What does your pivot look like? So, we look at, already talked about, someone's isms over there, someone's isms over there. You have to be solution oriented in your approach to everything, but because you have to consider what impacts are gonna, come at you, frankly. That sounds bad, but it's the truth. I said we're having real conversations, we're telling it, I think we're telling it like it is. There are impacts that are, the word is, it's another visual word. That's an impact. That's an impact. That is something that was not necessarily planned, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen. So what is going to come at you that's going to get in the way of your progress or get in the way of your plans? So, so C already asked the question, is your business or strategic plan still viable? Well, when's the last time you looked at it? If it's more than 6 months, that's probably, not probably, 200% way too long. Because a business plan is a living document. You don't just set it and forget it. So if you haven't looked at it lately, you better pull it out and dust it off because it needs some new eyeballs right about now. So I'm just going to suggest that, I think there's power in the pivot. It just, you cannot, well, you definitely can't do what you've always done, right? You have to do something different and embrace it, embrace change.
Right.
It's definitely here to stay.
Right.
So
yeah, with that, we always give you actions to take. And the great segue, what Larisa just said, embrace change. Why? Because change will happen. Some bigger than others. It's going to happen. I like this quote. Unfortunately, I happen to read it. It's not from a woman. It is from a guy, but that's okay, because we learn from everybody. But he said, commit to becoming your own leader. And that is what we're talking about. The multipreneur.
the lifestyle that
Will say what?
I just said, the multipreneur lifestyle they were on. Go ahead.
Right. Well, definitely, it is all about committing to becoming your own leader. By the way, that was Jordan Babineau, who used to be a professional football player, but he transitioned to be an entrepreneur and a business executive. And he's out there talking about what you need to do as you pivot. And so, various aspects. So we give statistics about women. There are pay gaps between women and men, but I gave you the example of construction. It's a smaller pay gap in the construction trades. So there you go. For those women, kudos to them. As we have talked about change and things that you need to do, and as Larisa talked about, did you go back and look at your business plan? Sometimes in your career, same kind of thing. You may need to reevaluate your career. Reevaluation does mean a planning period. You need to reflect on who you are, your self-awareness, your social networks, and self-management. All of those go into you growing and becoming. We sound like we beat this to death, but if you don't create an action plan, if you're just going willy-nilly, that's when things happen to you. Those are the kind of impacts you don't want to feel, right? So it's all about what's necessary. And we've talked about several things that are necessary because at the end of the day, your actions are going to affect what your finances look like. All right. Risa, I know there's a couple of things that you have talked about recently, and you mention often. So I'll let you throw in some of your actions here.
So I want you to just, a much shorter conversation is, it's all about the planning, be solution oriented. And I'm just at a different stage in my life, if you will, where I'm thinking about how I feel. And, you say, leave your feelings at home. Well, your feelings do, they're part of you. And they do come to work. And so I'm thinking about the work relationships. Some of those took a hit during the pandemic because we were not, in person. And so the relationships, I think they're not as strong as they were. And definitely if you don't have FaceTime. But I'm also looking at fulfillment. When I consider a job, it's like, what can I learn? What can I contribute? And how can I improve myself and or my business? Obviously, it's about the bottom line. So when you're looking at the changes that you make, I think and again, so we did a podcast, or Moxie, all the above, on an exit strategy. So make sure you check that out. But, in learning or hearing more about the great resignation, if you will, just as I suspected, it's the younger set, it's the I don't know my alphabet, Gen X, I think it is, the millennials, in the 30 to 45 group. So I'm not sure if that's you, but and again, it doesn't matter how old you are. If you need to make a change, you need to make a change. But I think that it is dollars and cents, right? We told you to land higher up the ladder. So make sure you do your homework. You want to negotiate well, because this is going to be presumably for a good chunk of your life, your next move. We're not suggesting, the young folks are moving around every 2 to 3 years. I understand that. But at some point, make sure that you're keeping an eye on the prize, if you will. Again, it's your contribution, it's your personal growth and your finances, because you do need to plan for that future. So make sure that you're aiming to land up the ladder, but you have to do your homework so that you can get what you need out of that job. And the culture, much shorter conversation. Why don't I just use the word culture? Is it a good culture fit? Is this company's culture right for you? And so I've been so educated this last 18 months, is, year and a half, too long. So now that is those words, the new language, those are some things that are resonating with me, and they may be important to you, but you want to make sure that you take that into consideration wherever your next move is going to be, that you're looking at who you're going to be making the move with. Wherever you land, that's going to be huge. And you're going to need a support system. Don't try and get out there and do this on your own. So who's your accountability partner? Who's your sounding board? Who do you check in with? More jobs are found through networking. So you must get out from behind the computer or virtually network. That's what we've all had to embrace over this period of time. But you do need to talk to other people. Do not try and do this on your own. So wherever you get your guidance or support from, you do need a team. So this is not the time to be the Lone Ranger.
Right. So with that, one thing that I know both Larisa and I do, and we think it would be very beneficial for you, is it's always good to get some training. You have to be current. You have to know what's going on. You have to keep your own mental self together. And sometimes it is just for you, but a lot of times what you learn, you can use, you can share with others. But it is really great that you do that, because when you're in business, you are trying to develop talent too, right? And so we need to keep growing. But if you're trying to help somebody else, you're trying to develop talent, share what you're learning as well. But we never want to leave that out. So much is talked about, all the things we need to do, but you got to take some time. You got to carve out some time to learn something.
Lifelong learning must be a way of life. So even if as you're carving out your new bright future, it does include training, education, seminars, reading, however you get it, you must keep the brain agile.
That's right. So, Larisa, I think we have talked about power in the pivot. I think that we have, shared the do's and don'ts. And the bottom line is change is going to happen, so embrace it. And so with that, we are going to sign off, but why don't you tell us about what's up next?
So, we do our part to bring you our brightest and finest thoughts and talking to the whole you, but we're also making every effort to reach out and to bring you new insights. So next week, we are going to have an installment from our signature series, Voyager Interviews. That would be 10 questions and the expert answers that can change your life. And next week's expert will be Debbie Turnus. She is a confidence coach. You know how important confidence is for women. And so that was why we wanted to do this interview, because I don't even know how to describe to you that, confidence helps you sally forth into the fray, if you will. So make sure you join us next Sunday. We will be speaking with Debbie Turnus. She is a confidence coach and a master certified fearless living coach. So, that's going to be a good conversation to have, ladies. So we will see you next week. And that has been Divas, Diamonds, and Dollars podcast for today. Thank you so much. See you next time. Ciao.
Goodbye. Thank you.